my end. Oh, there it is.
There we go. Yeah, you see
Boy,
the small
boy,
things.
boy, 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 boy. Boy, 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 boy.
Okay.
Boy,
So
boy, 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 boy. Boy, 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 boy. Boy, 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 boy. Boy.
all right. So do you want to go directly to the nuclear option, which is uh, in the corner of your world?
Um,
Or do I want to put like a date and time at the bottom of the screen and slowly build up to it to
TikTok, TikTok,
maximize
TikTok.
misery?
TikTok, TikTok. It's like Dunkirk.
Yeah, I was like, hey, it's the anime Dunkirk, except with characters you care about.
Boy. You mean you didn't care about French guy?
Oh, I care. I like the dad. I didn't know his fucking name, but I liked him. uh,
Boy. Boy, 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 boy. Boy, boy,
Actually,
boy.
I need to check something real quick because I want to figure out what. Because when I went to see Fairy Tale, I got a trailer of In This Corner of the World, and I just want to refresh myself on that trailer because
There was there was a fairy tale movie,
yes,
and they screened it.
yes,
Huh.
and there were more people there than there were at In This Corner of the World, which is surprising to nobody. But
Fairy tale. But was that fairy tale was Funimation, I assume, right?
yes, and so was technically so was this as well.
Is Funimation putting it out?
Yes.
Interesting.
I'm just trying to think
Is it on?
if this is the trailer I remember seeing.
Is it on the Amazons?
Not yet, I don't think.
Is your name on the Amazons?
It is now, yes.
I don't. I don't see imports.
Yeah, I think Amazon's listing is screwed up because it's still.
Is it the $80 version?
Yes, that's the collector's edition because I recognize the box art and I think you can see their logo on it. It's just for some reason it's listed as a.
What's in the collector's edition?
The the movie, the extras themselves are the same. There's an art book, and then the English soundtrack and the Japanese soundtrack.
Let's see in the blog.
Okay, so
oh, it's one of those split boxes.
Yeah, it is.
Oh, I don't see a normal edition. So I guess might as well. Yeah, there is no normal edition.
Yeah, there should be.
Garden of Feet. There's a DVD. Unless it's a double set or whatever.
I think it should be a Blu-ray combo, but
the box art only. I'll just pre-order the collectors for now. Why not? I'll save my promo. In this corner of the world of Funimation.
Huh. Okay, yeah, because that is the trailer that I saw first.
Boy. Speed boy. Press poi to poi. Poi, 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 poi. Poi, 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 poi. Poi, 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 poi. Poi, 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 poi.
Sorry, I just had to figure out if that trailer I saw was somewhat a decent facsimile of what the overall movie was. I think it was. Just now, all I can think about is Death Note now. Which
is what?
All I can think about is Death Note now.
Death Note? Poi Note?
Poi Note?
You
Oh,
can talk
man.
about written.
Nah, still got it.
Poi, 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 poi. Poi, 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 poi.
Okay. All right. So, do you want to just go right into that, or is there anything else that?
I don't mind.
All right.
Poi, 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 poi.
Nuclear poi.
Poi, 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 poi.
All right. Let's.
Poi, poi, poi.
All right. Let's do this. What am I doing? We may never know.
Poi, 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 poi. Poi, 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 poi.
Okay.
Poi, 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 poi. Poi, 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 poi. Poi, poi, poi. Poi?
Poi? Okay. Oh, there it is.
Poi?
No, I mislabeled it. No, it's 6.
Poi.
It's not 5. It doesn't matter. But now I'm clicking on wrong things again. Man.
Poi?
Okay, right. 96. Hello, and welcome to episode number 96. Yeah, that's right. Of the Bravo Whiskey Cast. Trying to remember what to say after all this long absence, which I apologize for. Yeah. It'll be worth the wait, promise.
Poi?
Oh, yeah, by the way, P.S. Motherfucking poi, y'all. I'm basically not, and with today is...
Firehawk 12.
And to tell you the truth, we've been like ramping up this episode for the past, according to the equipment here, about 52 minutes. About 75 to 85% of that is us just saying poi and fucking around with a website that's a poi generator. And you want to know what? you'll probably blame us for being like slackers or something, and that we need to try harder to produce the best content we can. Here's the thing. I just saw a movie, and I'm pretty sure Firehawk 12 also saw a movie that was fucking depressing. And if we need to like do poi for like 52 minutes before talking about it, that's what we're gonna fucking do, okay? Because as a person said at the end of my screening, said out loud audible, Jesus Christ. The movie we're talking about is wait a minute, what movie are we talking about? I keep forgetting the specific name. There it is. In This Corner of the World. Trailer number one. Wait, not that part. The other part.
Trailer number one, is it right?
No, sorry. That's not a subtitle. That's just me fucking around because we're about to talk about some serious shit right now. And I don't quite know where to begin.
Now I remember they do the thing where they say the title in the movie.
Yeah, they put that in the trailer. I watch a lot of Cinema Sins, so I call it the end credits moment.
Cinema Sins.
But anyway.
Off topic, but I find it interesting that there's a backlash against that channel now.
Really?
People don't seem to like it. But anyway.
Wow.
So I guess a little background.
Sure. I like background.
So this movie is directed by Sunao Katabuchi, who I guess who was sort of like an assistant director at Ghibli for a while, and sort of made his debut with My Miracle, which funny enough, I guess for me, My Miracle, my thoughts are now associated with that Kickstarter than with the film itself. I eventually got the DVD and all that, so that's fine. But My Miracle was a film, and I think we reviewed it at some point. Must have been years ago because that's when I first saw it. And I think you might have talked about it when you got the DVD.
No, I don't think so because I haven't actually watched it yet. I was going to.
Even when they sent out that the video link or whatever, you didn't watch it?
I lost it, so I never actually saw it. But it's in the other room. I can see it. I was going to watch it before the show. It was like a possibly a juxtaposition, but
I will say it's interesting because in some ways they're thematically similar, just in terms of thinking about nostalgia in the past and also mixing a bit of the imagination and reality, and the mix of visual styles, like reflecting that in the mix of visual styles. I think this film, because I guess it's a much more, I don't want to say relatable, but a much more easier to be empathetic or sympathetic to the story than it is in My Miracle, which My Miracle is basically about a girl who moves to the country and she feels isolated until she meets the girl with the My Miracle, which is her. She has the curl in her hair is called a mai, and that allows her to use her imagination to transport herself to the past and learn about the place where they're living and all that, and stuff happens. There's some drama that happens that brings everyone together and so on and so on. And I actually quite liked My Miracle, and it was kind of depressing to see how long it sort of took him to get another chance. I mean, first that My Miracle needed a Kickstarter to get released, that like no one wanted to license it.
Mhm.
I don't. I mean, I know. I think who was it? It's not. What was the company that did the Kickstarter? It's not Manga UK, is it?
Um,
That doesn't
keep
sound.
vamping, and
I
I'll
can
look it
just
up.
I can just type My Miracle Kickstarter. That well, the all the anime. That's right. Who did
Yeah, I can
something
remember.
else that I don't remember. But like they're a British. They're doing Your Name in the UK.
Yeah.
That's right. Anyway, like so I don't even know if an American company has licensed it, or if I don't know. The only way you can just buy it now is buy it through them. But um, so it's kind of a little bit of a sort of forgotten. I don't want to say classic, but for, because only time will tell. But it's a forgotten like good prestige anime film that pretty much no one will watch. um, and I think that's a little bit reflected in this movie as well, because because that movie wasn't financially successful, or at least probably not as successful as one would hope.
Mhm.
Um, he so to make in this corner, he had to the director basically did a Japanese Kickstarter. Um, they raised I think it was 38 million yen, which I don't know how much that is in non yen, but uh, it was just depressing that they had to go to Kickstarter to raise money to make this movie, and he went back to Kickstarter again to raise money to basically so they could afford to send the director to film festivals, because if your movie is backed by a big studio, um, then obviously the director and all the voice or the actors, they're paid by the studio to go do red carpet stuff and
Mhm.
film festival stuff and interviews and whatnot. um, so that I mean, this is sort of like the underdog film, the film that sort of, if your name was like the big anime blockbuster that set box office records in Asia, this is
Mhm.
the film that basically that by all rights wouldn't exist if not for, I assume, Japanese anime fans willing to support the creation of the film and the post release of the film. So
Oh,
even like,
and quick sidebar. You said 38 million.
yeah,
That's about uh, 347, 437 uh, 100,000 US
that's not a
dollars.
lot. I guess I must assume that was to prove that there was some, maybe that was to make some sort of like starter thing, and then
That was
they
the um, never mind. I
okay.
can't remember anymore.
um so that, I mean, that's just so it's I consider it, like, I didn't even know that they were going to put this out in theaters, so I consider it a bit
Mhm.
of a small miracle that it did come out. um and interestingly enough, so Funimation Films put out the movie, but I guess Shout Factory has the actual
Yeah.
DVD or home rights. um okay, so the production background aside, um the movie itself is a film about what it's like to what it would have been like to live in during in Hiroshima and Kure during sort of the peak of the World War II era. Um, and and so the film begins with the main character, Suzu, who as a little girl, and I I don't, the one
Mhm.
note I have I still remember is that the voice actress doesn't sound like a little girl, so that there's a little bit of dissonance there. But so it starts off
She
as a
she grows
oh, go
into it
ahead.
a little bit by the end.
Yes, but I was like, that doesn't sound like a little girl. But why would you cast someone else for that like 5 minutes or whatever? But
Mhm.
so so it's so it starts off with life in Hiroshima in the 30s, and it starts off in Christmas, which is I think an interesting note because you see, like for me, the thing I remember is you see Santa Claus, and that's just sort of for like an encroachment of Western culture and the idea of Christmas as a whole into Japan, and sort of explaining some of the pre-war conditions that like so the sort of the one of the thinkings is that America forced Japan to go to war because um, they were being cut off from resources
Mhm.
through American projections of power, and their their only response was to fight to push back by starting a war. I'm not a historian, so I don't I don't know, but that's sort of one of the narratives that I do know about sort of the precursor to war. Um, Hell, I think God, I think even if you remember that terrible Michael Bay movie, Pearl Harbor, I think
Uh-huh.
even that movie starts off with a little prologue explaining that, and explaining why the Japanese attacked first and all that. Um, but anyway, I feel like this was sort of like it's an interesting introduction to, without saying anything about the political situation, showing how Western culture or American culture has slowly sort of infiltrated Japan. Um, and and we get a little bit of her life um, in the 30s. We see her like their family. Uh, they harvest seaweed and presumably sell it as they're living.
Mhm.
Um, she goes to school and meets this guy. What was his name? Uh, I can't remember his name.
Um,
Um, this is bad.
I can't
What was the
remember
guy?
either. What's it the because I can't remember if it was like the was it the teacher guy?
Oh, Tetsu.
Oh.
There he is. Yes, Tetsu. Um, uh, and I think I feel like this whole beginning was just to show them having that little moment where Tetsu talks
Oh
about
right,
how
yeah.
his brother joined the Navy and he drowned, and so he hates the sea. So she decides, he gets her to paint a painting for her for his homework, and that's sort of like um, I guess that's their meet cute, I guess, as as kids, for lack of a better phrase.
Mhm.
So you get a little bit of her life. Um, oh, they I sort of I did like that part where I guess the tide. Um, there's a part where the tide just goes out and they're walking across, I guess, this the lake bed or the seabed to get to visit their grandparents.
Mhm.
And nothing like I think there's a little bit of about Oh, she meets the presumably a younger version of the prostitute that she meets later on. At least that's sort of the implication. But if you remember, so she goes to her grandparents' house and they have watermelon, and then a random girl shows up
Hmm.
who looks like all dirty and whatnot and starts eating her watermelon rinds, and then her grandmother says she must have been a spirit.
Hmm.
And but the assumption is later on you meet a woman who talks about how she used to eat watermelon rinds when she was a kid, and
Oh, okay. I missed that.
and
But
it might have it might have been her, might not, but I think that's part of the magic realism. Is this
mhm.
what's real, what's not type of theme that the film is going for. But so I guess the first act of the film is just showing life in Hiroshima, showing Suzu sort of growing up, her brief relationship with Tetsu, and why he's sort of important when he comes back later on, and uh, how she sort of ends up getting married to this guy who, um, I mean, I don't. I guess it's technically not an arranged marriage, even though it feels arranged because
Mhm.
he chooses her, and I guess she's just sort of like accepts that that's the one option she has to get married,
Mhm.
and she's happy. She's so um, so after that little sort of brief background, um, we the film jumps to the 40s. I think 40, maybe 43 or 44. It starts off, and we see that Suzu has gotten married to this guy whose name is um, Shusaku,
Yeah.
and um, and he and she ends up moving to Kure, which is this big naval port city. I guess I didn't actually look up the history of it, but based on the film, I assume it's sort of the main port where all the ships are either, if they're not built there, they're sort of serviced there. The sailors get off there for shore leave. Uh, I assume it's like Hawaii for American ships at the time. Um,
So
and
theoretically, it was the second oldest dockyard. So probably.
right, and both Shusaku and um, his father work at that naval shipyard base thing. Um, uh, and 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 so in the background, that war is going on,
Hmm.
but none of that at first is really depicted. Um, like he like the period of time that they skip over the start of the war entirely, and then puts you in the middle of it, and there are just little things like um, rationing. Uh, that like she learns how the rationing system works, and she goes to meetings with like the other, I guess, housewives
Hmm.
to um I can't like just learn like what to do when, I don't know, bombs drop or whatever,
Bombs
like
drop and dud bombs that don't explode but might explode.
and other other sort of daily life,
Yeah.
uh a depiction of daily life without any sort of indication of what's happening. It's sort of this movie. So this movie assumes when the bombs dropped. You sort of know the general timeline of the war, and you know, I mean, I guess obviously who who won the war, um, and doesn't delve into that at all. Um, and so you get this sort of like, it's almost as if a war isn't taking place. So you get this. So you get introduced to uh, her sister-in-law, and I guess it would be her niece Keiko and Harumi, who come and visit after basically her husband dies, so she doesn't want to live with her in-laws anymore and decides to visit her family, and they and so it's like another like, oh, it's she's finding it hard to fit in with her sister-in-law because she does things differently, and they sort of come off as, she her sister-in-law doesn't really seems like she doesn't really like, you know the girl that her brother chose as his wife, and so on and so on. um and these are sort of just domestic scenes that you could sort of strip away from the war context and still, like, I'm sure now there are women who don't like their sister-in-laws, I assume, or don't
Nah,
know how to fit in with their in-laws family,
no,
their in-laws and all that. So
no. I
um
know everyone I ever know outside of this podcast are people who have a sister-in-law. No, not a problem. Every single one. No.
well, and so again, it's a bit odd because it's still like the part of the 30s. It's still sort of like this, not idyllic, but sort of just this a depiction of this normal sort of slice of life
Mm-hmm.
would find in any kind of movie. Um, and it's only until a bit later when we sort of understand that, oh, they're actually in a war, and it's when we see that. Um, so we're not told that Japan is losing, but by anyone in the film, but we can see it by things like, just people finding out that relatives have died in a
Mm-hmm.
war. There are fewer and fewer ships in the harbor because they're being sunk. Like at one point, like the first time you sort of get a scene of the harbor, you see, um, they talk about how many, there are carriers and battleships and destroyers and whatnot,
Mm-hmm.
and then next time they're like, there are no carriers anymore. Well, I wonder why. And well, it's because they're being sunk and they're losing the war. Um, and like there's like the rationing gets more desperate as like there's a cute little scene where um she uh uh Suzu and Harumi, the niece, they're looking at a line of ants and they wonder where they're
Mm-hmm.
going, so they follow it and they notice, oh, it's going into the sugar. And
The only thing I can relate with directly through the entire movie, just FYI,
I've never seen that, so
are the ants invading
a
your
line of
sugar
ants
stash.
going through the sugar.
And like,
um,
seriously, fuckers?
but so they do a little thing where we'll put the sugar in a pot of water and have it float in the middle so that the ants won't get into the water. If the ants try to get it, basically building a moat for the sugar, and the sugar just sinks into the water. And
Buoyancy's a
um,
bitch.
yes, and we get introduced to the idea of the black market and
Mm-hmm.
uh, how people are learning to survive outside of the rationing system. And that's also when we learn about the red light district, and we meet, Susie doesn't understand where she is and why this
Mm-hmm.
area of the town looks so nice but is also so deserted, and it's because it's it's a red light district.
Yeah.
um
Red's got to go to work.
and so we see this. So as the film progresses, we sort of see this sort of degradation of society, of sort of the social structures. um, um, and this sort of comes to a head in her own life when uh, so so Tetsu comes back to visit her, and he's all grown up, and a sailor on the cruiser Alba, which I remember because of Can Call, funny enough. And
I remember because of New Game. So there you go.
new game, sure. and and I guess this is the closest thing we get to a love triangle where um, Suzu, like Shusaku, sort of like realizes that Suzu might not, or thinks that Suzu might not love him because of, I mean, basically Suzu has sort of like a tsundere, I don't know, love hate relationship with Tetsu, and and she's like, one of the things he says to her later is like, "You never get angry at me like that," and that's why he thinks she doesn't love him. Um, but anyway, like what happens is he says, I asked him to stay in the shed or the guest house or whatever it was.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, why don't you take this heater to him? And then when she walks out of their home, he locks the door behind her, implying that, you know, he's basically saying you can go do what you need to do with Tetsu, um, because you probably have feelings for him, um, um, and of course that, right, like as we see sort of society crumble around, we get this idea that her marriage is sort of on precarious ground as well, and also crumbling,
Mm-hmm.
and um, obviously, she while she likes Tetsu, she doesn't do anything with him, and she gets into a fight with her husband, asking why he would do that, and um, I guess they come to an understanding. I don't know if they quite resolved um, their relationship at that moment, but they do come to an understanding, and sort of the movie is like that for the most part, um, up until we get the first bombings, right? Um,
Mm-hmm.
it's just sort of like depictions of life as time progresses, and as you as an audience, you have the dramatic irony of knowing exactly what's happening. Like even if you don't know anything about World War II, you know that Japan loses. So the closer they gets to 1945,
Mm-hmm.
obviously the worse the war is going for them, um, and uh, and the worse that uh, life in Japan would have probably been. Um, so interestingly enough, this isn't brought up in the film. Well, it's shown in the film, but not really talked about. Like, so one of the things that that's sort of related to that idea is, so I think it's very deliberate that Tetsu was on the Alba. Like that wasn't just a random ship that they chose. Um, like part of it is he has Tetsu has a scene with Shusaku where he talks about how he sort of feels like in a bit of an awkward position as a sailor because he their ship hasn't sort of tasted victory, like honorable victory, or had like an honorable like defeat.
Mm-hmm.
They're just survivors,
Right.
which is I guess a bit of a shameful thing for him. And um and you see that at the end of the film, you see her ride past the harbor, and she finally, she gets to see the Alba sort of half sunk in the harbor, pointing out. And the story there is that basically, um, the ship was badly damaged but wasn't sunk in a battle, after, like in between when Tetsu was there, um, in dock and at the end of the movie.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so it was sunk. It wasn't sunk, but it was badly damaged, and they decided to sort of I forgot what it's called, but like not sink it, but sort of just set it in the harbor,
Mm-hmm.
so it's not a ship anymore, but it still has its guns. So they're like, we can use these ships' guns as like a defensive, like a defensive installation,
Mm-hmm.
and it's perhaps Tetsu died during one of the attacks on Kure. But that's sort of the idea that here's a ship that can't sail anymore. It's just there in the harbor, um, fulfilling its duty, but not fulfilling its duty in the way that it was meant to. And again, it just sort of plays into the sort of the themes of what's happening, um, in Japan at this time. And then so you get these sort of relationship dramas and these small, domestic scenes, and then the bombings start, right? And obviously because Kure is a major port, um, she's she's going to see, Suzu is going to see, most of the bombings, right? Like the presumably the Americans would want to take out, and I don't, again, I haven't read the history, but
Mm-hmm.
they presumably want to take out their shipworking operations and whatnot. And and what I find interesting is that you don't. I think there's only really, um, one scene you see from the perspective of the Americans, and that's when they fly over Kure with these like reconnaissance bombers,
Mm-hmm.
and you see there's a shot of a camera from one of the bombers zooming in on, um, the Yamato and taking pictures of it as it flies by,
Right.
as sort of like an intel run.
Mm-hmm.
Um, Otherwise, like in my mind, I was thinking because I just watched, Shin Godzilla, um, which I think we talked about. I can't
Yeah.
remember. Okay, it the Americans in this movie feel like Godzilla, like this giant force of nature that constantly attacks, the city and it constantly puts the people in peril. And but there's no, like, you don't really understand what's happening or why they're bombing. Like, I mean, like as an audience, but and then presumably like obviously the people in the film know because they're at war, but there's no prescribed motivations for the bombings. Like there isn't like a scene, even with Japanese generals explaining, oh, we have to protect our port because it's it's the last place where the ships can refuel or whatever. Like there's
Mm-hmm.
no context whatsoever. So it does feel like this, you know, pen like like they build, one of the things they do is build a bomb shelter, and it feels like they could be just hiding from, like a hurricane or a tornado or whatever, like a
Mm-hmm.
storm, instead of bombs. But that's sort of like an interesting way of depicting the American threats, in the film. Um, and as you sort of mentioned earlier, there's a bit of, um, the film sort of amps this up in earnest by having a countdown, both for us to know that, oh, we're counting down to Hiroshima, but also,
Mm-hmm.
we get dates that constantly just tell us when bombings happened.
Mm-hmm.
A bombing happened this day, two bombings happened this day, nothing happened this day, and and you can sort of imagine the peril of people never knowing, um, when a bomb might come down on them and what they might need to do. Um, oh, I guess one of the things that I liked about the first time we see a bombing is just how it's depicted. Like it sort of it transitions to basically, um, you're seeing someone draw like the explosions and whatnot
Mm-hmm.
instead of actual. I mean, obviously it's anime, so everything's drawn, but, um,
No CG.
rather, right, it's not the style of the anime. It switches to like what would look like crude artistic, interpretations of like pencil drawings of what it would be like to watch things blow up in the sky and
Mm-hmm.
having things blow up around you, which is really you know interesting to look at, and again brings up this idea of like how what is experience, I guess, like what is real, what isn't real, and so forth. um and I thought I muted that. Weird. I guess not.
Mutes for no
Anyway,
one.
um and so we from there we sort of, the bombings get worse and worse, and
Mm-hmm.
at one point, uh the um so her father-in-law gets injured, and uh Keiko is about to sort of reunite. She decides to leave town, I think, to visit her in-laws. I can't remember. She has a reason to leave town, and
Mm-hmm.
one of the things they do is, so they split. So on that day when she's buying tickets to leave town, um, they split up. They're like, okay, Keiko says, "I'll wait here for the tickets, and you take Harumi to go visit father in the hospital." And um, so they go do that, and we get another little sort of taste of sort of the the idea of the foreign invader by, um, like, there's a little scene where she's just, Harumi is playing with a record player while Susie's talking to her father-in-law, and she's like, and it's I forgot what Saigon was, but it's obviously it's one of those recognizable 1940s songs. um and Harumi is like, is this an enemy song? And like, you think about how they would have um gotten that record and so forth,
Mm-hmm.
and what that means. So even then, like, even in that, there's like a little encroachment of the American here.
And also, it tells you how adorable Hiromi is,
Oh,
and hopefully, she's super precious. And I hope nothing
she
ever happens to her.
right. She is, she's like the perfect little girl candidate. um
And
that
she knows
you know
everything about the ships and the Oba and the Yamato, and she helps um, Suzu with their hill garden. And
yes.
there's like a thunderstorm, and they're like, "That's what a That's what a thunderhead looks like." Just put that aside for later, but that's what it looks like. And sure, life is shit, but we're a family. We're having a good time together. Continue.
Right. So uh when when they're I guess when they're walking back to meet with Keiko again,
Mm-hmm.
um the air raid sirens sound off, and they're like, oh, we gotta find some place to go. And they go into a shelter, and they ride out the bombs. um there's this really just interesting, or like just an interesting shot of when they walk out, they see a woman just standing in front of her house that's been
Mm-hmm.
destroyed, and she's like, I you know she's just standing there in shock, and they they go to her well and borrow some of her water, and then leave. And there's nothing they can do either. They can just sort of just the only thing they can do is just offer her manners, like, of thanking
Mm-hmm.
her and whatnot, uh, because there's nothing they can do. And so they're walking back, and they they walk by this breach in the wall, and she's like, and Harumi goes over and says, I can see the ships from here, and or I think I can see the ships from here. And uh oh, she's interrupted, like a bomb disposal, like a fire
Like
team or whatever.
military guy.
Yeah, they they they're like driving past, and like, you guys should be careful. um you don't want to, don't hang out
Yeah,
too
don't
long.
hang out. Possibly
And
unexploded ordnance are bound.
well, that she remembers one of her lessons. about how there are American bombs that don't explode on impact. They're meant to drill into the earth and then detonate later,
Mhm.
and that's literally exactly what happens at that moment when she makes that realization. Um, and again, the film it switches to explodes, but we don't see the explosion. It switches to um, this sort of interpretive, sketchy art style where
Mhm.
it's just black and white. Black. It's a black background with white
Mhm.
pencil looking outlines, drawing what happens, and we find out that uh, Harumi was killed in that explosion, and Suzu lost her right arm, and it's sort of it's sort of at that point when the war sort of begins to hit its I guess its zenith,
Mhm.
in terms of constant American bombings. Um, Japan is definitely losing, and Suzu's just like, she feels guilty and responsible for killing or for causing Harumi's death,
Mhm.
and she's never quite the same. Um, like she there is one point where like a firebomb sort of
Mhm.
crashes into their house, and rather than run into the shelter, she decides to put out, because it didn't explode, she decides to put out the fire instead. But after that, it's sort of like a bit of a downhill descent for her in terms of her sort of psychological state.
Mhm. And I'm
Um,
not sure if it was like her in context or if it was part of that same scene, but I think at one point it was like the similar art style to the pencil drawing, but it showed like an alternate timeline where um, she got blown up and
oh yeah, that was
Harumi lost
more
her arm.
um, a bit of a. I think that was watercolors, but
Oh,
it
okay.
was basically her thinking about, if only I had used if I held her with my left arm, then she would still be
Right.
alive. Like things would be different. Um, but yeah, and again, that sort of plays into sort of the ideas of the imaginary, and
Hmm.
sort of history, right?
Hmm.
Um, it's a very visual film, which is one thing I really appreciated. Uh,
Hmm.
but but so she gets to the point where she just feels like she can't live with them anymore. Um, and I think, in the end, Keiko comes
Oh yeah,
to
because Keiko's giving her shit.
right. She does come to forgive her in the end, but like sort of at the peak of that, she sort of runs out into the open during. I can't remember. I think there was. Oh right. It's so one of the things that Tetsu gives her during their meeting was like a feather from
From Aaron.
heron, right? And so um, it, she sees a heron sort of land near the house as the bombing starts, and she's like, "You shouldn't be here. You shouldn't be
Yeah.
here." And she starts chasing it away, and that's how she ends out in the open um, when the bombs drop and a plane almost strafes her, but coincidentally, her husband is right there and pushes her out of the way. And it's sort of at that point she says she wants to go home, um, to Hiroshima, um, uh, and we see her sort of uh, getting ready to do that, and you're thinking, oh no, she's going to
I
Hiroshima.
know.
Uh, um, do you remember why she doesn't go? I can't remember.
I think it was just I wish this was dubbed because you're mentioning things I totally missed. But I think it was. I think it was an appointment about her arm that she couldn't reschedule, so it got delayed. And then she was
Oh, right.
hoping to. She was
I
like
guess
packing that day, and then
she wanted to see a doc. She wanted to see, right? She was like a festival or something that
yeah, it
she wanted
was
to go to,
yeah, and it was
and
that
then
day, and she was still gonna leave, and then, well, we'll get there.
right, yeah. So, um, yeah, I mean, so what happened? What we see is, uh, distance. We see this flash of light. Um, it often,
Well,
this
like not
high.
even that. I think it was. I think actually they were inside at the time.
They're inside, but they see. I distinctly remember like this, like a blink or whatever, like a
Well,
flash,
yeah,
like a
yeah, it was still like a
flash.
flash, but it was intense enough that they were inside, and it was still like I think they even did the like I think the whole screen went white at the time, so it was like, and it would have been I think coming from like the total opposite direction. So
Right. I don't
that
think
should
that was
just
for them. That
yeah,
was
well,
that was for us, the audience, because I don't think they noticed that until um, like they start feeling the tremors. Um,
right.
and actually, maybe I should have looked. Like I don't know how far Korea is from Hiroshima, but obviously close enough that they would feel that, and then you see the mushroom cloud float up, and oh, we get another sort of flashback to when. Oh, sorry, 1 second.
Yep.
Yeah. Okay, okay, bye. Um, there's a scene where, like early in the movie, there's a scene where she talks about she describes the clouds to Harumi and's like, oh, that's a
Mm-hmm.
big cloud. That means there's a storm coming and it starts raining, and 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 so there's like a little reminder of that scene in here in this when we see the mushroom cloud, and um, we know it's not rain that's gonna kill anyone out there who's alive. It's uh it's radiation,
Mm-hmm.
um, which is hinted at a bit later on.
Yeah.
But so what happens is, um, the bomb drops, uh, and they no one knows what happens. Uh, there's just sort of trying to think about what they need to do until and then they find out that over the radio that the emperor has officially surrendered, um, to America. And this I think is the only sort of political point for me that's made in the film where, um, like she takes the defeat personally. Like I think
Mm-hmm.
everyone in the family does, because it's a realization that, like for Keiko, it's like her daughter died for nothing.
Mm-hmm.
And as Suzu sort of runs away from the house, we see she runs past Keiko, who's sort of sobbing, um, and she runs to the garden that they have, and she starts sort of just yelling about, what was the point of all this violence, if we're just going to give into it. And I feel like, so it's still not specific enough to have any um, political meaning, because it's not a direct attack on the Americans,
Mm-hmm.
but like even though that's implied, but this is the part where I was a little bit uncomfortable with the movie, because um because so both my parents lived under Japanese occupation as children, and
Mm-hmm.
so for me, it's it's the Japanese who were violent, right? They were
Mm-hmm.
the oppressors, and seeing them, and that was sort of one of the things about the movie that I don't know. I don't know how I feel about it. Like or I have complicated feelings about it because obviously civilians of this time on both sides suffered um, a lot as a result of the war. That that essentially had nothing to do with them. They're they're victims of circumstance. But
Mhm.
then again, Japanese, they were the bad guys. I mean, I don't think that like I mean, Japan, like Japanese colonization of Asia is something that's not really covered because, um, and I don't want I don't want to say, oh, the Holocaust is more horrible than what happened to Asian peoples
Mhm.
in Asia, but because we live in the West, there's a Western, and because Canada, basically, Canada's only contribution to the Pacific Campaign was um, losing Hong Kong and losing Singapore,
Mhm.
and when that happened, we had Canadian POWs in Asia. That's about it. Like, you know, when I think we had the anniversary of Dieppe that we sort of did a whole thing for, and that that's Canadian history, is just Europe, 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 D-Day, and kill Hitler and all that.
Mhm.
So so I mean, in some respect, I'm. It's just hard because I'm applying a Western context to this film. I'm applying a Chinese context to this film because
Mhm.
um like I would imagine it would be like someone like a Holocaust survivor, what or like maybe a child of a Holocaust survivor watching a film about you know how hard the Germans had it during World War II, and be like, yeah, yes, I'm sure the German civilians had it really rough, but uh, you know, shit, we shit happened to us too, for
Mhm.
as much as white supremacists might want to deny it. Um, so that's just where that that's just the moment where I got a little bit um confused about how I would think about the film. Is that moment where she sort of
Mhm.
curses out um so she curses out violence basically, uh which I think is probably like I I, I think I can understand that as a way to sort of avoid being political, but I I don't know, part of me, and maybe this would have been anachronistic because I guess the assumption is all Japanese people were just blindly loyal to the emperor and no one would have questioned the war at all. But it would have been nice to be like, for them to think about, for someone to just raise the question of why did we do any of this, and why did we put ourselves through this, and it's just something that's not really brought up. um, it is what it is. um, after that after that we begin to pick up the pieces in a post-war Japan, as we as the audience see what happened to Hiroshima through Suzu's eyes,
Mhm.
as um, eventually she gets a chance to go there and to visit what's left of her family. Uh, so her brother was killed in the war, and I can't remember if her parents were killed as well, but
I think
um,
they. I think what happened is their mom went like.
oh right,
I think her
I think
mom
she was
disappeared,
in the
and her
she
dad
was in the heart of the
find her, and
bombs or
then they
something. Yeah,
kind of
yeah, yeah.
implied,
Right. Um, she sees her sister. She finally finds her sister, and
Mhm.
when she sees um, her sister, her sister's sick, and she reveals one of those I guess those radiation
Welts
lesions.
or whatever. Yeah.
Yeah, that implies that she's probably going to die as well.
As Jar Jar says, "You still gonna die."
I don't know what to say to that.
I don't know. I'm just like
but so yeah, so she so when she leaves, so she begins. So she reunites with her husband, with Shoshaku, after she visits um, her after she visits her sister.
Mm-hmm.
Who he also came down to find her, I guess, and 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 just I guess so it sort of then cuts to this uh, uh, little vignette of a girl who survived the bombing directly, and she and it's just like a series of images that are very powerful, but it's just like
Yeah.
it's a mother holding her daughter by the arm, um, and sort of just trying her best to walk away from the blast, I guess. And we see that this woman has lost her arm, and like I think she just sits down and dies, and this little girl just stays with her mother until um like I guess maggots just start crawling out of her ears, and then the girl's just left on her own to like she walks off on her own to survive. And we get this little chance meeting where um Suzu and Shusaku are they're about to leave Hiroshima, and I guess they're eating like some rice thingy, and she drops it, and the little girl picks it up, and she's like, the little girl sees Suzu and sees that she's also lost her arm, and you're like, oh, there's like a little bit of a connection there, and um, they just decide to adopt her, and they go back home to Kure, uh, and and uh, they decide to raise this orphan little girl as their own, and it sort of just ends as you know so this is what the war was, this is how we lived it, and this is how we survive it, by showing our Suzu may have lost her family, Keiko may have lost her family, but they build a new family, you know Suzu essentially finding new parents and a new sister. Um, there's a girl uh, who sort of can help fill the void left by Harumi, um, and Suzu's relationship with Shokaku seems strong at the end,
Mm-hmm.
uh, and and that's that's the end of the movie, and then and the movie sort of the last sort of spoken bit of the movie is like it turns out the girl has lice, and and the whole family freaks out when they find out that it's spread to all of them. And and that's the end of the movie, and then the credits we see sort of basically just short little um um images
Right.
of
Yeah.
life after that, of how they sort of recover, and what happens to the girl and what happens to the characters, and like everyone grows up and they find a way to live, and obviously um continue to survive. uh
Mm-hmm.
what I find really affecting is that, so after that there's another set of credits, um where it's just it's pictures of
Oh
Um,
right, yeah.
it yeah, it's someone drawing pictures of the characters as children again, and scenes from Suzu's past,
Hmm.
and and it was just right at the end where, like, even thinking about it now, I'm sort of feeling a little bit emotional where uh like, so we see this hand just drawing these things, and then at the end, um these scenes of the idyllic past that they used to have, or Suzu used to Suzu had. Ugh.
Hmm.
And at the very end, we see this hand waving goodbye to you, um, or goodbye to the audience, as the credits finally end, and it's like, oh, that's, I mean, that's it's a metaphor for Suzu's arm, and how,
Hmm.
um, even though she lost it, she continues to survive, and is like, oh, god damn it. even
Thanks,
even think
movie.
even thinking about it now, I'm a bit,
Hmm.
I'm a bit whatever, allergic, or
Yeah,
uh
it's all that dust. I
it's
know.
all the dust in the room, yeah.
I've been wanting to clean out the recording studio for
um,
weeks, and I just, shit just keeps coming up.
like, it just becomes sort of like an endearing image of survival, of not not forget your past, but also move like move on from what has happened to build a better life. And yeah, that's the movie, and I think it's really, like, for me, like, I think, absent the politics of it, I
Hmm.
think I think it's a very, it's a very grounded and subdued film, which I I'm sort of like, hmm, like, because it's hard not to compare this to Your Name, where, because they sort of came out at around the same time, and it's easy to see why Your Name was the big blockbuster, because it was a happy story with, like, a happy ending, and it was a pure rom-com.
Hmm.
Whereas, so I was looking for posters of this film, and I don't know if I can bring, if I saved it, uh corner of the world, but there's just a really, poster, really, uh a poster, like, tagline that I think really shouldn't, uh torn uh maybe I can link this to you too. um
Okay, it's nothing like It's the Bomb or anything.
no.
Okay.
uh it's the tagline on this poster is "Torn apart by war, brought together by love." And so you're thinking, oh, this is one of those, like, war, like, if you
Yeah.
don't know anything about
Okay.
the film,
So
just,
just a second. You said that. So let me just try and find. But I think okay, because yeah, that's the same. That's okay. Yeah, that's the same poster they have on the wiki for the movie. Um,
okay.
so yeah, but I they used the other one with the or at least I think our screening's the one with the dandelion or whatever. But interesting you would say that because
That's not the film. That's not this film.
yeah,
That's
okay,
a bad way to sell this film. It's
okay.
really not.
So here's the thing. I know I'm going to be killing the podcast right now, but so before the show, I told you guys that um, Cineplex does a bad job of telling me when anime is going to be coming out.
Right.
So I was looking for the Fairy Tale movie back in July and nothing. And like a couple days before going to Fairy Tale, I searched for In the Corner of the World and nothing. And I'm like, dude, what? And then I go to see Fairy Tale and I see that friggin' Dandelion poster. I'm like, what? Seriously? Like I checked this like a week ago and nothing came up. And I searched it again, and it's like, oh yeah, next Tuesday. I'm like, great, I know what I'm doing, but fucking thanks, Cineplex. So I went to see the Fairy Tale movie, and because it was a Funimation Films joint as well, I got to see this lovely trailer of In the Corner of the World, and I didn't really know much about this movie going in, except for just like the first sentence of the description, where it said, "A girl grows up in Hiroshima," and I'm like, well, shit. I'm not reading any more of this because, well, spoiler for history and a large portion of this review. But anyway, so anyway, back to Fairy Tale. I saw this trailer, which I'll link to you, and it basically towed the line of that tagline, which I'm like, that's not the movie.
They made it seem like a rom-com between her and
or not necessarily a rom-com, but like, and I'm like, okay, so this is more like anime Dunkirk, where it's like just people. Now, this movie cared about its characters more than I think Dunkirk did, but I wouldn't necessarily say that the love story between Suzu and what's his name. Sorry, I didn't have the wiki up in time.
It's not much of a love story.
Yeah, it's not much of a love story, and it's not like the show Shukaku is like trying really hard to sell it. And I'm just like, wow.
Maybe it's just like a sign of the times where their relationship, the main relationship, is just like a functional. I mean, it's not an arranged marriage, but it's very close to one. It's sort of like, I saw this girl, so I'm going to get my dad to go ask her dad if we could get married. And even though at first she says she's not interested, I guess she meets him. So what happens is they come. So I guess I glossed over this, but the only thing, like, so there's a part early on in the story where she's visiting Hiroshima as a girl, and she gets lost, and she tells the story about how an ogre captured her and this little boy, and was kidnapping them, and she drew a picture of the night sky and put it in front of the ogre's face and caused them to fall asleep, and that's how they escaped. And I mean, obviously that didn't happen, but something like that. Some meeting did happen because that's how he remembers her. That's how he remembers meeting her, and years later, he decides he wants to marry her based on that meeting. And
which, speaking of which, like at the end of the movie, a callback to that. And
yes, I forgot. I just remembered. Yes,
and I'm just like, wow. Okay, yes. I get it.
That's the final part of that's one of the final parts of the movie. Anyway, they meet. He wants to marry her, and the first time they meet, she actually doesn't say she's the girl that he wants, but pretends to be this random woman in the woods who leads them back to the train station, and it's like a bit later, like we find out that they're married, right? It's not like a great love story or anything. Like I guess she didn't want to meet him and marry him, but I guess that little meeting was enough to eventually convince her that to get married. And yeah, we get, there's a little callback to that at the end where we see the ogre walk by the adult versions of them on the same bridge in Hiroshima before they go home. And
which clearly, how like super rude. He's clearly not an ogre. God.
And it's just, that it's just, again, that's another sort of way the film mixes realism and magic realism in an interesting way, at least to me. Yeah, so I guess my point was just, it's not really much of a love story. It's a functional marriage story that slowly sort of blossoms into full relationship, but
Mm-hmm.
it's not like, it's not she, she's not like writing wartime letters to her husband on the front and whatever.
Mm-hmm.
Although I guess looking at this, maybe it's I should watch that trailer after. But looking at this tagline, I guess you could theoretically suggest that love could mean sort of like familial love or something, and not necessarily romantic love. But I don't think that's what the poster is selling. Um, uh, but yeah, it's just that's just not what this movie is, and it I could see it's as sort of like a historical drama that is fairly depressing, and it's more about. I mean, I bring it. I tie it back to sort of the idea of mono noir that I sort of rail on and on about. It's just about. It's a film about um, living on in the minute, in the moment of survival and of um, looking to the future while recognizing sort of the effects of the present. And and I think it's a very Japanese story, but it's also not a very um, hugely, I don't know, romantic story that you can sell that people would want to see over and over again, like they did presumably with Your
Mm-hmm.
Name. Um, and it's unfortunate. Like this is a film that basically had to, where they had to run a Kickstarter to get the director out to festivals to promote it because they, there's no one to support this film, and it's not like there was someone on so there was a bit of discussion about the film on GAF, on NeoGAF, and one of the things is like if this was a live action film, it would get a lot more buzz and it'll have a lot of money behind it. And like it's true, if this was a live action film, um, all of the you would probably all of the actors would be probably the Japanese equivalent of big stars. Um, you could have that girl who was in Pacific Rim and the Sagi drop be Harumi, and she's so precious, and you see her die, and it would be tear jerking because that's a cute girl, and it would
Mm-hmm.
this would be like an Oscar bait movie, right? If it was a live action film, but because it's animation, it's sort of it's just a little it's just this little film that I don't know people. There's no real incentive for people to see, unfortunately. Um, I feel like, and I guess just to talk about the film in a little more broader sense, like it's for me, it's a bit like The Wind Rises in that
Mm-hmm.
context, um, where did you need
Yeah, I
to?
just gotta reset because you're coming in a little crunchy. So I'm gonna try
Okay,
kicking the shit out of Skype, and I'll be right back. I'm gonna take
okay.
Skype into the back of the Skype barn. We're gonna have a little talk,
I
maybe with a shotgun.
guess technically the Google thing should still be recording, although I haven't looked
Yeah,
at it.
I think it's sort of a general thing, so it might be crunchy there, but um, just a second.
Are you gonna shut everything down or just
Or I'll be right back.
okay? Yellow.
Hello?
Is the Google thing still going, or it still says live?
But, I didn't stop it. But
okay.
Here,
is it still sounding weird or whatever?
Sorry, I keep muting the. Say something again. Yeah, we're good. Okay. Anyway, just like something on my end is shitting the bed, so most likely, probably so, or was. It's no longer shitting. It has already shat.
It has been shat.
Yeah. So before we start again, just a couple fun facts that while we were getting into the
fun facts.
Yeah. So while you were talking about all of those awesome things like nuclear bombs and Fallout, I was just like, and you asked how close it's
the two cities are?
Yeah. They share the same coast. They're actually Korea.
Well, we have a thing. There's a scene that I skipped over where the people of Hiroshima come and help Kure after one of the fire bombings. So the assumption is that they're relatively close.
It's about 23 kilometers, essentially.
I don't know what that is, but
it's about. Thanks to Google Maps, it said it's about 23-ish minutes by car. So,
okay,
one episode of anime.
So I guess that would be like a suburb of Toronto or something if I put it in those terms. Maybe. Yeah. Okay. So it makes sense that it would be close enough to feel the effects. And I guess another thing I forgot to mention was just there's a scene where someone walked over from Hiroshima.
Mm-hmm. Oh, and just like
sat down and died.
It implied that it self-incinerated and just crumbled to dust. That was something. Because I believe it was like his gray form, and also super sad because it was that. I think it was like the mother's son.
Oh, her son.
She didn't recognize him, and he's just like this gray husk. And then in like the next scene, he's just gone, and it's just like gray ash.
Right.
And I'm just like, dude. I don't know how much more of this I could take. But anyway.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
did you want to start again?
Yeah, we can start again. Also, okay. when you get
maybe I can leave that little bit in as well. I don't know.
Yeah, we'll leave that bit in. Editing's for suckers and tryhards. So
that bit where I was interrupted by my mom.
Oh well, yeah, that all. That I noted. So that's not a problem. I'm not a monster, but the other right. this carryover part, I might do some work, but I got things. Not that bad. But yeah.
Yes. Okay. So. Oh yes, so I was just thinking about this film in the context of other films. Like one that comes to mind is The Wind Rises, which I feel like is similar thematically in terms of being like sort of on the periphery of the war. It also, I feel like, avoid some of like, so I don't know if it completely avoids the like I think perhaps The Wind Rises is a little more political, but it excuses it by saying we're inventors and we're not responsible for what people do for inventions. I feel like, but they're sort of the same ideas of like surviving the war and and serving the country and doing your best that way. Um, and it's interesting. Like I feel like if this if In This Corner was a Ghibli film, it would be getting a lot more attention and praise than it is otherwise. Um, and that's just one of those unfortunate realities. I don't know if marketing or of studio prestige or whatever. Like, you know, when you think about it, like this is, I think it's a, I mean, check. I don't know. I think it's a second directed film. Um, oh, he did Arrietty for Ghibli back in 2001, I guess. So this is his. Oh, not Arrietty. Oh yes, yes, it's a Studio 4. So this is his third film, and I guess he did Black Lagoon, which I've never seen, but so I mean, he's not a big name, but for his third film, this is pretty impressive. I think. I think it's I think it's his strongest film of like. So there's no reason why this couldn't have been a breakout hit, but I don't know if it's just the nature of the story or the nature, like I don't know if the market was saturated just by Your Name hype that killed all other films or whatever, but yeah, I feel like should have been this should have been as big as The Wind Rises at least. But you know, that's just the way it is. Thinking about it in terms of other, like we're sort of in a weird position where there's been, at least for me, like a lot of World War II things that have come out this year. Like, so there was a British movie called Their Finest, which came out around Christmas of last year, but I watched it early in January, and it's similar to this in that it was very much about people living in London during the Blitzkrieg, basically. You know, that was half the story. The other half of the story was how do we make a propaganda movie about Dunkirk, which I thought was a really funny coincidence, given that Dunkirk came out a few months later.
Okay, I was gonna say I thought in that title you were actually referencing Dunkirk, and I was like, huh?
No, they made the Dunkirk movie in that movie. That was funny. And I was just thinking of Dunkirk. But so ignoring that part of the movie, the sort of the Blitzkrieg part of Their Finest was just, it was much like this movie where it's just how, you know, here are Londoners just coping with surviving bombings and air raids. You know, the main character in that film, she notices, you know, she runs into a subway shelter during one of these bombings, and then when she comes out, she sees that her entire apartment building was blown up, and it's just a lot of like, here are these civilians suffering, but we just have to do what we can to make life bearable because you know, that's just what we do. And what the Dunkirk part fits in because she ends up working for I guess the film, like the government film department to make war films for the people. And for me it was interesting because like the film, like on a very basic level, the films are the same, but I didn't have any problems, you know, sympathizing with British people being bombed by Germans because of the sort of the historical and cultural narrative of like, you know, Nazis are bad, so fuck them all, and you know, keep calm, carry on. British stiff upper lip. We gotta cheer the Brits as they survive the Jerry's unrelenting bombings or whatever. And I was just thinking about that, and it's just an interesting. I don't know if I have a comment. It's just like an interesting reaction where I I didn't have a problem with one, but I did sort of at least have an intellectual problem with the other, and it's just historical context that created that feeling inside me. And I think it's interesting because there's a show, like a mini series on Netflix. I think it's called Tokyo. Tokyo Trials. Yes, it's called Tokyo Trials, and it's a Netflix NHK co-production. There's a famous Indian actor in it, but I think the funny part is Michael Ironside is in it. he plays General MacArthur, which I guess makes sense. But I guess the point of that. So what was interesting is that miniseries was basically about the Japanese version of the Nuremberg trials. So we had the Nuremberg trials that set up that we all know about because that's where all the Nazis are convicted, and we found out that's where the public at large found out about the Holocaust and so forth. And they sort of decided they needed to do a similar thing in Japan to hold them accountable for their actions in the war as well. And what was interesting is just that film also depicts a post-war Japan and some of the realities of living as the quote-unquote losers of the war. But it's just, and maybe by virtue of the subject matter, it was interesting to have it to have it be so political, and it did like the Forrest Gump thing where they used like actual historical footage and then they put in the actors they hired to replace the real people they represented in history, so that you get these so that it looks like it's the actual recordings of the courtroom scenes. I think it's interesting that, so I guess to me it was just interesting to see a Japanese production try to at least think about the politics of the war in a context where this is a film where it does its best to try to avoid the politics of the war. Yeah, I guess I don't. It just made me think about these things about depictions of war, depictions of history, how historical narratives fit into fictional narratives, and is there a responsibility to the politics, or is it not fair to even judge this film on those terms? Like if I'm and that's the thing, is devoid of that. Of course, I feel as sorry for Suzu as I do for the character in Their Finest. That character suffers in kind of a. I won't spoil that film. There's a she suffers a loss that is kind of, I don't know if it's cheap or not, or cheap or tragic, but either way, it's sort of. They have the similar ending where, at the end of the film, they. Susie resolves to be like a parent and they'll be a part of the family. And this woman in Their Finest, I have to get back to work. I have to, I can't just sit and cry about what happened. I have to, carry on, as the British thing would say. And so if I think the films are working similarly, is it fair for me to even think about the historical context? And I don't know if that I have an answer to that. It's just it's an interesting theoretical exercise, and part of that I think is because Japan typically ignores World War II, and perhaps for good reason. The same way that Germans probably don't like making a lot of World War II movies where you see German soldiers killing, I don't know, Americans, and that's supposed to be heroic when it's not. I was like, it's funny, like the Germany, a German television station did basically their version of Band of Brothers, where it's like this, like, I don't know, like I think it was like a 6-episode World War II epic. And it followed several characters, and each of the characters are basically people who don't want to be in the war. Like that's their way of representing World War II, is to show that it's something they never wanted a part of. And I think that's the only way you could do that as Germany. And I just wonder if Japan, like, and maybe this requires, you know, a Japanese sociologist and a Japanese historian to unpack these issues, or maybe there's probably someone who's written a book about it. But yeah, it's just something interesting to think about. I guess before I turn it over to you, overall, I did really like the film. I think it's a very strong film. My very first thought was, this is a very grounded version of My Miracle, because of its subject matter. And I already liked My Miracle, so it's not a surprise that I like this film as well. I hope more people have a chance to watch it. Whenever I guess whenever Shout Factory puts it out, I think it's definitely worth watching, and I'm looking forward to owning it when it does come out, so I can. I don't know. I don't know if I want to say I look forward to watching it again, because again the last the last act is really rough, but I think intellectually, like, just thinking about being able to think about the film again, being able to look at how it uses visuals, like it uses the medium of anime in a very interesting manner. Particularly, it uses the medium of visual art in a very interesting manner, and so I kind of just want to rewatch that to see if there's anything I missed. Yeah, how about you? What did you think?
So, I think I've just recently, as in like maybe just barely the last couple of minutes, been able to sort of put it in some kind of context. I still liked it, but the issue I had with it a lot is that there was like, obviously I felt felt bad for everybody, but I couldn't really, like, a lot of the time it was, even though it has like that same like My Miracle art style, and it's not like super like super realism, like something like Your Name or sort of a typical anime. I couldn't really put anything in context like that. I guess I'll just pick one, because there were a couple, at least, like the Suzu reacting to Japanese surrender. I remember thinking at the time, like, I feel sad, but I have, like, I wouldn't even know, like, how to feel, because clearly, growing up in Canada, in the time that I've been living, I haven't had to luckily go through anything nearly like that. And I'm just like, I don't even know. And I see a lot of war movies, and that doesn't, or like even just sort of historical docudramas and period pieces that sort of tried to do that same effect.
Right.
And I've never ever, like, that sentence has never gone through my mind at all. Even the only thing that I can think of that I've actually thought about in the last couple minutes is, I can't remember when, but I want to say it was either late 90s. It wasn't in the 2000s. It was definitely at least late 90s, if maybe mid to late 90s, where the CBC had a miniseries.
Yes, I remember that.
I'm gonna let you go just in case.
Go ahead. I'm trying to think of the title, but I can't.
Although, like, it's the only sort of similar thing I can think about that even comes close to this sort of kind of style, and I'm making a lot of, like, exceptions. But it was sort of a mini-series of the creation of the Avro Arrow. Were we thinking about the same thing, or were you thinking of something else?
Yes.
Okay. And that made me think about it when you were like, so you're waiting for it to come out, but you're not sure if you'd watch it again. Like, I taped that whole thing so I could watch it again, and I never did. Because the whole thing, and I think it might be like that whole sort of, now that I think about it, I guess I do, but, like, not nearly as, like, the intense sort of feelings that Suzu had at the time, of just having, like, this sort of national thing happen and then just have it, like, be crushed by essentially another country, where, just in case people don't know, the Avro Arrow was a plane that was supposed to be a Soviet missile interceptor, and we were going to build it to protect us in the US against the Soviet Union. And then at the last minute, the US basically pressured us to scrap the whole thing, and they just went with counter missiles instead. And that's the closest thing I could think of to, like, that one scene of Suzy reacting to the surrender of Japan. And just, I think there was even a follow-up scene where buddy, who I can't remember the name of, he's like, yeah, so we don't have an army anymore, so I guess we can just sort of hang out, because the US forced us to disband as part of the surrender. And I'm just like, ugh. And just, and again, it's one of those things where it's like, yeah, it might be, like, I was about to commit emotional suicide and watch Grave of the Fireflies finally before this episode, but I just,
I was going to, so I'll keep going, but that's something I wanted to get.
Yes, but I couldn't do it. I was gonna pull the trigger, but I couldn't do it. I might someday. I might tomorrow. I might next week. Because I think that's, even though it will probably utterly crush me, I just, yeah, just, it's just one of those. Sure, you could, like, again, there's the political stuff that you brought up that's, like, in a foreign context, I can't really relate to as much, and just sort of weird things where it's like, you know, like you mentioned, what Japan was trying to do at the time, and that, you know, it's sort of painting it in a sad, which it is, again, in the context of that, and depending on your situation at the time, that might have been something, but, and I'm not knocking you for that. It's not what I'm here for, but, oh, it's just one of those things where, you know, a lot of people are like, oh, right, anime, pervy old men touching butts, upskirts, finely tailored female clothing that perfectly accentuates the upper mid region. But there's other stuff too, and I'm just like, man. Luckily though, in my foray of anime movies, even though I expected it this time for sure. Like, I'm gonna go there and I'm finally gonna have an anime movie that I get to watch all by myself. And it didn't happen. And I'm like, I think more people should see this because it's extremely impacting. But more people showed up than I thought, and I'm just like, well, some people get it.
I watched it on God, I think it was a Saturday, the day after it came out, and it was. I mean, it wasn't full, but I would say there were like maybe 10, 15 people, which I'm not sure what I expected because obviously when I went to see Your Name, it was sold out. So even, before, like, there was already hype for the movie before. I mean, obviously it was building for a year on the internet, and you could actually watch it on the internet. But so I don't know.
Yeah, and I'm just like, look, I get it. Just when you come over and you look at my anime connection, just ignore my 2 Love Live plushies. And yes, that is one hentai. Technically, it is a hentai, but everything else, just anime is actually a good art form, and it can be when it wants to be. And again, this is just one of those. So. And another thing, I wanted to look it up, but I'm pretty sure I'm just making this, like, doing my own mind factory where the radio broadcasts, I'm sure it was just like a dude with a filter. But I was like, come on, like, wouldn't that be cool if those were like spliced in real recordings?
I can't imagine.
It couldn't have been, and they probably don't have those. But like, it sounded legit enough that was my first thought. And then Mr. Rational came in and was like, "Don't be stupid. That's dumb. No, it's not. But what if it is? That's so cool, though. What if it was? But it's not. Don't be stupid." But anyways, I'm just like, oh, because it just sounded so authentic. And I don't know, just like, so you mentioned other things. I'm just going to bring it up because it's the only thing I could like remotely compare it to. Is that I think the runtime is more or less the same. I think Dunkirk maybe came in a little shorter, but
Dunkirk is really short. This is like a 2-hour film.
Or I think I got into Dunkirk and it was like around 2 hours, so it was probably somewhere to like 1:30, maybe 1:45. But while you're looking that up, basically my 2 comparisons would be obviously the ticking clock, which in this movie is much longer than Dunkirk's was.
Dunkirk is about 15, 20 minutes shorter.
Okay, yeah, that makes sense. Just like Dunkirk, obviously, I think its longest period of time that it spans is a week. I think it's a week on the beach. I forget the numbers now, but
yeah, it's a week.
A day, an hour. Yeah. So the longest period of time is a week, but still, it's that constant, like, literally ticking clock in the background. Thanks, Hans Zimmer. Yeah. I guess I can forgive you for your fucking space organs.
Oh, that's another thing I can talk about after.
Okay, fucking Interstellar and your goddamn space organs.
It's funny.
You can't use a pipe organ in space because it needs air. Ah, okay, sorry. Focus. So where was I? Right. So constant ticking clock down to, in Dunkirk's case, I'm assuming freedom, unless you're Tom Hardy, which then you're just kind of fucked. Spoiler.
Well, survival more than anything.
Yeah, but as opposed to this, it's like somewhat destruction, but still like that same sort of ticking clock and sort of like this same level of intensity, which your corner comes back to. It's not constant, which thank God, because that was probably one of my things about Dunkirk where I'm like, oh, I need to. Are we? Nope. Still okay. Let's go. And I get that was the point, but I'm like, so it's weird. Okay, so it's like a difference of 15 minutes, which I'm sure the character bits are longer than that. So if you tried to like put character moments in Dunkirk the same as in your corner, it would come out to like the same runtime or something like that. I'm not gonna do that madness, but they're just sort of oddly similar, and it's not as intense, but you still get you get more character moments, obviously, in your corner. Again, like I mentioned before, it's not the movie I was sold, but I still liked it a lot.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I just wanted to like, so with Grave of the Fireflies, like the other thing that came up in my mind was this old Shaft anime. Old, I say old, it's like, I don't know, 2008 or whatever. Mm-hmm. So not that old. I guess that's old now.
9 years.
Like, Jesus Christ. Like, I've been watching that anime for that long. Natsu no Arashi, just briefly, it's about a boy who meets up, who goes like to, I can't remember. He goes to like his aunt's house or something for the summer and works in this cafe. And in this cafe, it's full of ghosts. And you find out one of the ghosts was, I think she died in World War II, and there's flashbacks to the bombings back then. There's like, it's like half, like, it's like ghosts, but also time travel, because they can, like, because she can go back to her life, and actually like change things. And I don't know, I forgot. It's been too long, but that and Grave of the Fireflies, I think for me, when I watched those, I didn't really think about the politics because it was so focused. I mean, they're kids basically. There are adults involved, particularly in Grave of Fireflies, but it's not about the like, it's about the brother and the sister and how they survive and how they, I guess, I don't know, spoilers, how they die at the end.
Oh yeah, I know. They eat it. I know that much. And even if I didn't, it's my own fault.
The film opens them as ghosts, and then they start talking about what happened to them. Right. And I feel like it was easier to think about that because, or to not think about the political context, because there's very much, it's kids who literally have no power. They are just victims. And I don't know, like, I mean, and the adults are to blame in Grave of the Fireflies as well. So there's a little bit of that anyway. So I guess for me, that's a little bit of the difference with, and like because the characters in this film, they're not only adults, but they're like two of them are they work for or in the military, um, and it's just say something. I don't know, but yeah, that I will just say that's why it didn't really bother me as much. Uh, yeah, I mean, I feel like we talked about this film for a couple hours. It feels like, or at least an hour
At
and
least
a
an
half.
hour. We spent like just
Um,
under an hour avoiding talking about it, or I did. So,
it's yeah, it's I you know it's, I don't know if Shout Factory does streaming. I know they do have a streaming thing, but I don't know if what they stream or whatever. But I guess we'll see. Like people will find a way to watch it either way. Um, I still at least we don't have to do a Kickstarter to get this released here. Anyway,
it already has a dub.
yes. Which I don't know. Did they show the dubbed version for you or
No. Nope. I got to
I,
read
I
it.
wonder because it's like yeah on Wikipedia there's a cast and everything, but I don't know.
I didn't see it.
Maybe they just announced the cast and
Yes.
it was Laura Post, who I don't know who that is, but she has a link, so I assume
Yeah.
that's someone.
Well, I could.
Oh, she's in.
Yeah, she's.
Oh, she's a game. She's a game voice actor, I guess.
Well, she was also English Noizumi, but
Oh no!
I know
Oh
you
yes.
wouldn't actually have any context for that either.
No.
So,
no, I don't. She was the American in Squid Girl. I wonder how that worked. But no, that's but anyway, I guess the final sort of interesting aside is, I guess there was a live action version of this that I can't find any information on other than 2 reviews on IMDb, and it came out in 2011. And one of the things is that they the big difference just from the review, like again, I don't know anything about it. It's just apparently the prostitute and Susie's husband, Shosaku, have a little thing together as well.
huh?
Like I guess they were childhood lovers or something. I don't know. So that story works in a little more.
Okay.
And maybe that's in the original manga that the film is based on. But I mean, I can't find any information about this because any information that is about an anime rather than this little known TV movie. So there we go. So I guess there was a live action movie, and okay, maybe I need to append that and say if there was a big budget Hollywood backed live action movie, it would be popular and Oscar baity.
Yeah, and not like other country produced movies like Passchendaele, where it tries to be a war film, and then it. I wanted to do a running bet with my friend on how long it would take that movie just to devolve into Road to Avonlea because they couldn't maintain like the budget of a war movie. But
I haven't seen it, but you know what's funny? He did Afghan war movie recently. Not Paul Gross. A Hyena Road.
Okay.
That came out, and that looked okay. I don't know where, like, I don't know anything about the production or where it was, but it's about Canadian troops in Afghanistan and what happens. And that was fine, I guess. To me, it was just a Canadian war movie exists because don't have those, but yeah.
They're expensive.
I mean, the only other like I know I talked about this, but just I Know Zero, which came out a couple of years ago in Japan, and which which I brought up in the context of The Wind Rises because Miyazaki had a problem with it. It was just that film, at least the director claims, the film was meant to show the cost of war because it was about kamikaze pilots and how you created a society that indoctrinated people who were willingly killing themselves for a cause that really had no moral backing other than it's the emperor, so you do what he says. But yeah, I feel like if there's anything we missed, then so be it. I feel like we've covered everything. Do you?
Yep.
Okay.
I was going to say something, but I'm not going to say it anymore.
I'll say
in regards to covering it. You could say we carpet bombed it.
Oh, why would you say that?
I don't know, because I'm secretly a horrible person. Okay? At least I'm able to admit it. Look, I cry, I bleed. I might be an asshole, but I do those other things.
Well, moving on.
Moving on.
Just bring, since you mentioned Hans Zimmer, I totally forgot. I went to the Hans Zimmer concert. I didn't listen to Slash Filmcast, right?
Oh, it's the same one, yeah.
That's that one. Yeah,
okay.
It was pretty. It was pretty cool. The Wonder Woman cellist girl was there, and she did her thing where, I guess I just call it sexy cello because I don't know.
Okay.
That's yeah. She it was kind of, for me it was kind of hilarious because they had this bit where they wanted to make her hair like flow around, so you could tell it was just fans blowing up her hair. It looked kind of dumb, but whatever. And yeah.
Weird cello aside, that track. Oh god, I love that. So out of the whole like giant crater that's currently the DCEU, that track, and okay, by extension, the Wonder Woman movie, but let's be honest, that track.
I don't know.
So good.
I feel like it's the Wonder Woman movie that. It's fine, but whatever.
In my defense, I said by extension, not equivalency, just extension.
Right. The whole concert's up on you. Like someone just, rather than watch a concert, decided to record it. So if you wanted to watch it, you can. It's pretty. The only weird thing was, so I guess I didn't know he did the music for Lion King. I guess he did the instrumental stuff. So when they did Lion King, they kept teasing basically the Elton John song because that's the one right? And it took like 5 minutes before they just decided to insert the circle of life right at the end. It's like out of nowhere. It's like, god damn it.
Okay. I thought you meant the other song, the other much known song from the Lion King, the Death Square.
The Death Square. The
Death Square, because the circle of life.
The
Death Square. No one ever remembers it, but I do.
But so it was a fun concert. I don't know. I don't know if it was worth $150, but I don't regret watching it.
Hey, look, I currently can't back Ari at the moment because actually, is it a week from today? Yeah, it's a week from today. I'll be spending more money than I think I should, but guilt is a powerful motivator on a concert. So yeah.
Oh, what concert? I
Oh,
just said.
it's the Aqua Blu-ray.
Oh,
That's
what's
like
this?
way too much money. But again, guilt is a powerful motivator. So
The second, the second Aqua concert is happening or happened?
they have 2/3 of it is at define concert.
I don't know. I just see it in the game. I
Yeah,
guess it's in
so
Kobe or something.
it's a tour, which is a really weird tour because they did the first stop, then they took 2 weeks to get to the next stop, which I'm not gonna maybe all of those maybe Rail Wars, or as I like to call it, Japan Rail Lines propaganda. Maybe they're
Boots.
not as cool as you think. Maybe they're not as efficient as they claim to be. I don't know. I'm not throwing any shade, but 2 weeks get to the next stop, and then like a whole almost month and a half for the last one.
So what? I mean, this is their annual concert, right?
Or semi-annual. Like their last one was 6 months ago.
So is this like, did they tape this one?
They did. It wasn't. It was only the last four, if you want to be technical about it, were only live viewing within Japan because for some reason they couldn't get other people to sign on for 6 fucking lives over a period of 2 months. Weird how that works. So there's, I think, a Taiwan viewing for the third one at the end of September, and delayed viewings of that one. So I don't know what's going to happen there.
Wait, so are they
Anyway.
doing the thing here, or?
Oh, no one has said anything at all about any place that isn't Asia at this point.
Okay, I just assumed after the last one,
Yeah.
they would have done something, but
they probably won't say anything about it until it is either about to happen or has already happened. Just going on past experience. But anyway, that aside, from all accounts, it's really good. And I want to see it really bad, but I can't. Because they basically do all of their Blu-ray songs, and they're fucking great. But anyway,
it's weird. I still don't. I mean, I play the game. I still don't know any of the core songs. Outside maybe the OP and the ED. Oh, well.
I'm slowly amassing them all, and I feel great inside for spending that much money. I'm winking. I don't feel great, but I feel like I should, so I do it.
They need a hit like "Are You Lady?"
Again, I don't understand. I watched that last week, and the first round, the same lines, they clearly do the subtitle as ready, and the same line, when it's done again, it says lady. I'm like, no, that's not right. Because one, that's taking the fact that directly translated Japanese lyrics make no goddamn sense anyway. But even still, it's ready both times. There's no lady. There can't be. And if there is, I'll eat my hat. I have like 5 Cuba hats. I can pick one.
Are you lady?
Oh, I am totally ready. Yes, to answer your question, I'm completely ready. I am so ready, like you can't believe.
Okay.
But anyway,
yes. I guess for me the other big news was just the Aria Kickstarter. I guess we're already 2 weeks in when we did this podcast, which I guess So it was announced that was it Otacon or some other? I was at a convention. I
Uh,
just don't remember.
sure, that
I don't
sounds
know
about
the
right.
anime
Because
convention schedule, but
I'm pretty sure because it went Anime Expo, then Otakon, and then if you want to be nice and count Crunchyroll Expo, which was this weekend, then it was probably Otakon.
And I'm just really I'm happy. Like I'm really happy that they're doing it. Like I just didn't expect it just because um it's Aria, which
Mm-hmm.
so I've gone on and on about how much I love this anime. I I think I would say between this and Gintama, um, a close first and second for my favorite anime of all time that I've seen. Um, I probably picked this. I think I like Gintama, but I think this I could have this on a loop for the rest of my life forever and be fine with that.
Mm-hmm.
um, although I could do the same with Gintama probably. Anyway, so I'm just I'm really happy that it's getting a Blu-ray. I was ready to plunk down $1,000 for all 3 seasons to import them from Japan, but um, I didn't because of just reading about the the poor quality upscale
Mm-hmm.
that's on the Blu-rays, and just like figuring out, do I want to buy secondhand and use Tencent or try to buy from Amazon itself? It's like at that point I was just like, you know what, um, I'll wait. Like I was gonna wait and see if the prices go down enough where I can just pick them up for relatively cheap on Amazon Japan. And you have to think about it uh, because Nozomi slash Right Stuff uh, announced their Aria Kickstarter, and I guess the so it's run. I guess it's run. I don't know if it's run jointly or in part or how that deal is with the Pied Piper Skip Beat people.
Separately. Because Pied
Well,
Piper is because Right Stuff they're using for Shipment House, but
right, but like the whoever does the Pied Piper thing is running the Kickstarter.
hmm. Well,
Uh,
hey, you got to get paid.
I like I tweeted oh yeah so when I did the Kickstarter I did the click the tweet that you backed the project, and then the Pied Piper account liked it, and then I was just reading them. Um, I don't know if maybe they're like helping um, produce the dub by like organizing it or whatever, which I guess must make sense if they already have the experience doing the skip beat dub. That
Although
just go through that.
I think that's going to be I think their dub's in New York though, and the skip beat was in California.
Yeah, well, I don't know. I don't know.
The the state
I
they
just know
can't the United States can't be that big. It's fine.
I just know Pied Piper.
You
The
can do a
Pied
lot on a
Piper
phone call.
people are involved somehow. I don't know. Yeah, she on the Kickstarter that Pied Piper account is listed as the collaborator.
Okay.
Again, I don't know if that just means just running the Kickstarter or some behind it. It probably says on the
Well,
page
in your
itself.
defense, I did get a message on my skip beat update being like, "Hey, your disc is coming. I know it said August, September. Aria, you should totally look at it."
It's funny. I just because of that, I looked at the Skippy thing and I almost bought it. And it's like $30 to ship to Canada. I was like, I don't know. For Skippy, I can wait. Maybe buy some mega thing on buy like $250 worth of anime on Right Stuff and get free shipping sometime. Um, but yeah. Anyway, Aria.
Anyway,
Yeah. So
Martian
I
cow
guess
cats or
it feels
Martian
like
cows that are actually cats. Yeah.
it feels like they were being put in the same position as Skippy, where the studio said, "We'll give you the rights to put out the Blu-ray, but you have to do a dub."
Mm-hmm.
And and I guess like Skip Beat, this was a test to see if it would happen. And I don't want to say this is a Kickstarter that's blowing things out of the water, but they hit their initial goal pretty quickly, and it looks like. And so one of the stress it was funny because I asked the Pied Piper person on Twitter, was like, are you going to add other seasons as stretch goals, or what's the plan here? It's like, I can't talk about any of that, sorry. And it's like, of course, a couple of days later, they added stretch goals. But it it's at $227,000 right now. I think it's going to hit at least the stretch goal for the first 2 seasons, and presumably the next goal will be to have the final season and OVA dubbed and released as well. So we'll potentially have the entire series in one go, which I'm really happy about. And if I'm happy, like if I can pay $300 for the entire series as opposed to 1,000, happy with that. And they say they're going to do their own upscale, so maybe, hopefully, it'll look better than the Japanese discs. And yeah.
Well, I'm pretty sure it probably will, because I know of the guy that does a lot of Maizumi stuff and that sort of thing, and he tends to know what he's talking about. So no problem.
Well, yeah. I mean, I'm getting it either way, so it's not even a thing. And maybe like I don't like, I'm not much of a dub person, but I'd watch Aria again in the dub. Why not? I mean, for me, the Japanese, like I've watched Aria all through maybe 3 or 4 times now. So the Japanese voices are ingrained in me, but I'm sure the English voices will be fine, and I'll be more than happy to experience the show again that way.
So
it gives me another excuse to watch it.
So, Aria character question: is there one dude in there?
There are. I'm trying. There's 2. No, there's. Okay. There's a mailman.
Like a mail carrier person, yes. Or like a person who's a male?
A mail carrier. And so we talk about this show endlessly, but like, so because the show is basically, let's take Venice, put it into space, and a lot of like the sort of slice of life things that happen on the show is just recreating Venetian life. So the mailman is like, how do you deliver mail in a city that's full of canals? Well, you don't have a mail truck, you have a mail gondola, and you pick up mail with a pole, and you use that pole to put it into someone's mailbox that's on the shore, and that's how you deliver mail. And that's like an episode. And it's, hey, I know it doesn't really sound riveting, but there's a message about the power of mail in there that I thought was really touching. But that's the show. There are 2 male characters who have invented jobs, science fiction jobs. There's one called he's in a group called the Salamanders. I think it's been a while, so I think they're called the Salamanders. And what they do is they control Mars. So this is Venice on Mars. So they control Mars's a climate system to make sure, I assume, to make sure they don't all die of Martian exposure or whatever. And there's another character. I can't remember if it was called a mole, an MOLE, or some underground themed name animal, but he works underground near the core of Mars to regulate its gravity, so that Um,
Um,
and so that Mars has the same gravity as Earth, and I there is an explanation as to
okay,
how that works.
because gravity doesn't work that way,
I think,
really.
but I think it has something to do with manipulating the spin of the core.
Okay.
Like it doesn't really matter. It's just
I know it doesn't. I'm just.
it's a science, like they actually show it, so it's like a science fiction thing. It's like
Mhm.
the few science fiction aspects thingies of the show, and to sort of show a part of the daily life, but it's not that important. But
Okay.
there are at least three uh, male characters in the show.
Okay. The reason I
They also
ask.
they also do a gender swap episode.
Okay. Okay. The reason I ask is because.
Oh, Arya, sorry, the cat is also
Yeah.
male.
Okay. All right. Well, thank God. Um, but I can't. Well, sidebar from my original question, or my original statement I was going to make. Was it? I think it was you. It had to be you, where you said you put on Twitter why there wasn't an Arya plushie involved. I agree.
Yeah, because that was one of the original, like back when they sold the DVDs originally.
Mhm.
Um, obviously I wasn't into anime at the time, but one of the original thingies, like I guess they still do. I don't know if they still do that. Where if you pre-order a Nozomi published DVD, there's a bonus
Mhm.
item. One of the items was an Aria plush.
Huh.
Um, I would like. I think one of their bonus items is like the play set for like $1,000 or whatever, and it's like,
Mhm.
I, like if it was a plushie, I would probably be more willing to up my pledge. But yeah, but anyway, yes,
Yeah.
I there was a couple summers ago. I spent time trying to find one, but I just online, but I just couldn't, and I don't know anyone in Japan anymore
Mhm.
who can get one.
Well.
They were in capsule machines, but I
Yeah.
um, that say la vie.
Yeah.
um,
Yeah. But yeah, the
yeah,
reason I
but
asked about the dude characters is that one of the comments I saw on the Kickstarter was they're like, I know there's like one guy in the show, but you should have Crispin Freeman do the voice. I was like, he's too busy being a monkey, or sorry, an ape. He'll never he'll never need to do an anime again.
Crispin Freeman.
As long as he's on that Overwatch um, chug train
Yes.
doing the voice of Winston, he'll never have to do another anime again. But anyway.
Do you have any questions about Aria
um,
in particular, specifically?
Not really. I want to back it. I always want to
You
go high
sure?
on those freaking Kickstarters. God damn it! Why did it cost so much? I know why, but why?
Just get the whole series. You know you want to.
Oh, I know I do, but I'm like, fuck. Goddamn glasses. Goddamn Love Live. Goddamn your stupid best value. $200. Goddamn.
Oh, you spent $200 on gems.
No. That Blu-ray is like
Oh,
before shipping like $206.
okay.
It's not pretty. The things I do not do because they are good. I do them because they cost a lot of money and I hate myself. But yeah.
But you got 8 hours of concert.
Yeah, I know. And I get to watch. Oh, I can't do it. I feel like it might be the only disc I ever buy where I'll watch like the first disc and the third disc and not be able to bring myself to watch the
The crying
second
disc.
disc, the crying disc, because oh, like that basically cemented Rico as my second best girl forever. But anyway, that's why I have a Hanamaru and Rico Nesso in the other room. The big ones, because I don't do the keychain ones. Because they're so cute. But anyway, see, that's the thing, Noisy. If you put an Aria plushie, me wondering about whether I should do the Kickstarter or not because I'm poor would not be a problem. It would already be solved. Currently, right now, I'm trying to work my way into my Kickstarter account because it still has my old credit card, so I can change that. So I'll probably do it anyway, but I'm just saying, you got a plushie, you would have had my money already. Because
I guess it's impossible, but I kind of wish I did have a plushie.
Yeah, because the things I definitely need more of: coffee mugs and plushies.
Yeah.
But anyway,
yeah, I'm just hoping. I feel like it should. Assuming the next goal is 280 for season 3. It should. I hope it should hit that goal, and being able to get the whole season in one shot would be nice, or the whole series in one shot. The only thing that would be missing are the new OVAs that came out with the Japanese Blu-ray box sets, but based on the comments, it looks like they don't have the rights to those, so that would be a separate licensing deal and release deal. So, but I assume if this Kickstarter is not successful, they won't have a problem negotiating that. Yeah.
Yeah, and hopefully they do negotiations ahead of time so they don't run into certain shitty things like the Skip Beat Kickstarter did, and they're like, "Oh, those extra things you said you wanted to do, you can't do those because that's a technically we consider that a re-edit of content, and you can't do that."
Yeah.
Which is kind of infuriating. Anyway, licensing. But yeah, now that's pretty much it.
Yeah. Oh, did you want to talk about Death Note?
Oh wow, that was so like hours ago. Let me just unlike certain important people, they like recently, in general, they not necessarily the best thing when you're trying to get a good point across to go off the cuff. So you want to have prepared statements. So what I'll do is I'm just going to pull up Skype here, and I think what I told you before was kind of in line of a prepared statement. So in regards to the Death Note live action movie, I will just read this statement that I made to you earlier before the show started. It's in text and it's written thusly. Like when telling your younger brother a really good story with interesting messages, he's not really going to remember it, and you try to stress the things that are important and vital to the story. Then when you hear him retell it to someone else and it ends up not being as good, you can't, and it's just kind of upsetting, but you really can't summon up the strength to be mad because, it's your little brother and you don't want to really be mad at him, but you're just really disappointed. It's kind of like that.
Okay, then.
Yeah, because like everybody lives except whatever Misa's translated name was, and
because I
think they translated her name. They left everybody else the same. I don't know why.
Oh, really?
L's still, or light is still light. L is still L.
L is still L.
But they're like, nah, Misa. Like, that's not whatever, dude. You do you. But anyway.
So this is a standalone movie, right?
Yes. And if you don't know anything about Death Note, it's fine. It's probably still kind of meh, and who cares? But anyway, I could stand here and be like, oh, it's stupid because they're like, I'm going to call myself Kira because people think I'm Japanese. And Kira means killer. I'm like, no, fucker, it doesn't. Anyone who does...
Kira means killer.
No, Kira does not mean killer because the Love Life song, where their wedding song was called Kira Kira Sensation, which means it doesn't mean killer killer sensation, you dickhead. It means, I looked it up, I can't remember what it means right now. What it actually meant in the context of the anime is that when they tried to say killer in Japanese, because we all know aquas can be pronounced aqua in Japanese, killer came out as Kira. So it isn't fucking Japanese for killer, you dick, but it's just a stupid adaptation, so I'm not going to dwell on it, and I'm going to move on. Also, everybody managed to live, even possibly L, or even L and fucking Light, and at the end of it, it's implied that L was so pissed off that I'm getting mad. I just don't care. It's just so dumb. So the thing is I think their big mistake, and even whatever, fuck it. Again, I keep saying the word mistake, but it's like, I can't even right now. Like, Light's whole original arc, if I'm not mistaken, was, hey, I'm going to create my own justice. And hey, I have this perfect tool of being able to kill people and not being able to be caught. I can, even if people are spying on me, I can basically put a small TV somehow in this bag of potato chips, and then I'm going to make it look like I'm studying, and then I'm going to take a potato chip, and then I'm going to take a potato chip and eat it, which is, everyone's favorite moment from the English dub. And it's basically his descent into madness, except I guess they didn't have the balls in this adaptation to make him a villain. So they shift that to Misa, and then he confronts her in the climax. And then there's like this whole confusing thing where L's really pissed that he didn't get, he couldn't catch Light and call him out as being Kira. And then he might have found a page. Well, he did find a page of the Death Note at the end, and he might have wrote Light's name in it, but they didn't actually show that.
So does it end, or is it like...
It ends, but it's like...
wait for part 2 or whatever?
No, it doesn't even do that. Like, it pretty much implies that L kills Light using a page of the Death Note at the end, but like the whole arc of Light's character is where he basically starts off with good intentions and then gets corrupted by power and becomes a murderer by the end.
Right.
And the guy who's supposed to be our fucking audience surrogate fucking takes a gun and shoots him. But in this, they don't have the balls to make him a villain, so it looks like they're going to make Ryuk the villain, because he gives Light the Death Note, and then on a couple of occasions sort of takes his own actions to do certain things, but then it turns out it was actually not Misa the whole time, and now she's the villain, and Light is trying to like pull her off the edge. And I'm like, but in every single iteration of this story, you're the villain, bro. And then anyway, it could have used more Willem Dafoe, but he's too expensive. Anyway, fuck Death Note. Actually, no, not even fuck Death Note. Meh. I give it a meh. I give it the biggest, loudest fucking meh I can mutter. Just meh.
So how's the fan community taken to it?
I don't know. Probably shitty. All I know is that. All I know is that I follow Megan Shipman on Twitter because she's a voice actor and she does Hanamaru, among other things. And she called it like a horrible adaptation or horrible, like not doing Death Note justice, which I agree with, but whatever. And then she got mad because people were yelling at her and calling her stupid. And I'm like, first dudes, god damn it, whatever, fuck the internet. And I'm just like, she's right though. It's real dumb. Anyway, fuck Death Note.
So it's weird. It's just I just assumed it would be like a continuing thing.
Let's hope not. It might be. I don't know. Maybe that's why they didn't
Was
show.
there a post credits Marvel
Nope.
sequence?
I looked. I looked. I looked.
That's funny.
I was like, "There's got to be something." Even like the ending where, like right after the climax, where it's like, Misa dies, L is in a coma, and I don't know. It's almost like they're like. It's almost like they wanted to write in the part where I think there's at least maybe one or a couple parts in the anime where Light either denounces the Death Note, which means he loses all of his memories from when he had it. So it's like he never had it, and then still orchestrates people to kill people with the Death Note to shake suspicion from him. And it's like at the last minute when he's trying to be taken in by the Seattle police, he like writes all this pretty complicated shit on one page of the Death Note that he has. And I'm like, really, dude? Like in those couple of minutes, you wrote all that and looked up 2 names to orchestrate this whole thing where you might live, but oh, by the way, no, I'm done. Fuck it. I don't care. I shouldn't care. This shouldn't piss me off as much. I'm just trying to move on. The good news is I can't speak for American Netflix, but hey, the original Death Note is still there. So if you live in Canada and you want to see Death Note, go to Netflix and see Death Note.
I have to assume that it's they have the rights. That would be the only way that would make sense to do the the live action movie.
I think it was like a co-production, and Death Note's been there for a while. But anyway, my conclusion: go to Netflix and watch Death Note because it is really good.
Does Netflix have the Japanese live action movies?
No. But if you want to see a really good version of Netflix or really good version of Death Note, go to Netflix.
Right.
And look for the animated version. But go to Netflix and watch Death Note. See, I was able to speak my piece and still turn it into a positive plug. But anyway.
Netflix.
Yeah. Also, they replaced where the original anime goes into like, I'm Cure and I'm going to talk about my justice and I'm going to say all this stuff about being the god of the world, and then the soundtrack comes in of
Does the anime end?
Yeah.
It does adapt the full thing. I can't remember.
I think so. I think it did. It kind of ran out of time in the second half. So there's after L, there's like N and some other guy, and the other guy kind of gets the shaft, I think. But I think they adapted most of it. But yeah. Anyway, whatever.
Okay.
Whatever.
That's a way to end the show.
Yeah. Let's see. A movie I really liked and a movie I really couldn't care about. That's symmetry, except it's not symmetry at all. It's asymmetry. But yeah. I'm trying to think. No, not really. Wasn't anything other than those two really that was worth talking about. Other than actually, no. Fairy Tale was just kind of the movie itself was underwhelming, but it put a stinger in there for the series when it's coming back next year. So, getting back on that Fairy Tale hype train to watch it get Spider-Man disease. Sorry, by Spider-Man disease, I mean the narrative thing where they have a villain and then they make another villain and then they have to realize, wait, there's too many villains, so we have to find a reason for one of the villains to be sympathetic and kind of not like the other villain, except there's still too many villains, which is a problem.
Indeed.
So that was kind of I'll look forward to seeing that kind of not necessarily train wreck, but narrative come to its hopeful conclusion next year. The movie itself, even I don't know. It's like, hey, I'm a movie of a shonen anime, so all I have to do is do fights and do them well. I couldn't necessarily do that very well.
Oh.
Aw. Anyway, I don't care. I got my Wendy fight. I didn't get as much as I wanted, but I might. I saw that somewhere.
If you remember, it's Dark House approved. If you remember.
All right, yeah. Okay. I'll think about it. Oh yeah, with all this like anime that's coming out but is on Netflix and being shoved, I have like all this free time. Except for one show. I can't remember the name of it right now. But out of all of the anime that Netflix is going to be doing in the next year, which is like today from a year from today, out of like the 4 or 5 of them, one is actually supposedly getting a simulcast. So we're getting there. We're like the little engine that could. Just keep saying we think we can, and we'll get there. Yeah, that's fine.
We think you can.
Yeah, you know, I'm kind of bummed that Violet Evergarden is getting delayed by a season, but at least I'm getting it. And you know what? It's a show that I don't have to worry about for a whole 12 weeks. 13 weeks, and then I can just watch it all at once. I know necessarily that's not the right attitude to have.
Is next season Love Live?
Yes.
Okay.
Next season is going to be great because it's Love Live, Food Wars, one other thing I can't remember.
I gave up on show. Even I watched a bad lesbian show, and that's about it. I'm good. I'll wait for the next movie, next prestige movie to come out. I guess. I'm sure I'll watch Love Live. Or maybe whenever the Can Call movie comes out.
You better watch Love Live, or we're ending this podcast. I'm just like, nope.
I want Funimation to do a Can Call movie screening, just to see who would show up for that.
Oh, no surprise, they had a ship off.
A ship off.
Where they had ship votes. And I was hoping, I was really gunning for Yamato. But guess who won? Congo.
Ooh. Of course, Congo Bongo.
And come on.
Congo this. Burning love.
Oh, Congo, why?
She's the best. That's all.
Fine.
That,
whatever.
that voice actress, I think she does 8 can call ships. So she's earning that paycheck. Because all the sister ships are voiced by the same person.
Wow.
Which is kind of unfortunate. I looked at the dub and that they didn't do that, which is kind of unfortunate. And maybe that's just the reality of it. But like the idea was because they're sister ships, so they should have the same voice actress.
Mm-hmm.
And so like a lot of the conversations are just the voice actors talking to themselves because it's like with Nagato and Mitsu, they're both the same.
Mm-hmm.
Or all the Congo sisters talking to each other. That's her just switching between the 4 voices. So I kind of hoped they had done that, but they didn't. But oh well.
Oh well.
Anyway.
So on that note,
burning Lavu.
Burning Lavu Poi. Burning Poi. If your poi is burning for more than 5 days, please consult a family physician. I have been Crazy Canuck.
And I've been Firehawk Poi.
And we'll poi you later. Oh, wait.
Poi.
Poi.
Poi. And then this is where you insert the Star Wars poi.
Oh God, no. You could say that's kind of a poi wreck. No.
Oh.
No.
I see what you pointed there.
Oh yeah, I was gonna look this up, but I got distracted.
Look at
I was gonna see what Big Track says about
the thingy?
About Arya. Oh, okay.
I don't think that works because
okay.
Like I think a lot of the people, like I upped my pledge when they added the new tiers, and once they add another tier for the second half of the other season, those numbers are going to inflate by another 20,000, 20 to 30,000 again.
Yeah, that makes sense.
So I don't think it's not a reliable, like it's not reliably showing how many new backers or the trend of backers overall is just
right. Yeah, that makes sense because I just pulled it up and it's like 400%.
Right.
And I'm like, nope, that doesn't make sense.
But yeah, I hope it does the whole thing just to make my life easier. So I don't have to like find a way to buy origination if it comes out separately. But first world problems, I guess.
First world problems.
Boy, 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 boy.
Yeah. First world problems. Like,
boy, 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 boy.
Why is it whenever I use Google Translate to translate Japanese into English, it still doesn't make any sense? First world problems.
Poi world poi.
Poi world poi. Oh,
I can unmute. I should unmute Chrome thingy.